The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find. The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style.
Jerry Pickett, president of the Parma Hilton Historical Society. Thank you for joining me on this, the 100th episode of the Big H Podcast. You had the idea of having me on as the guest and you as the host. But before I flip it over to you, tell me a little bit about what you did at work today to get your crew in the mood for the July 4th celebration.
Thanks, Mike. We actually hosted a trivia contest in recognition of the 250th anniversary of the birth of our country. And so I hosted a 25-question trivia contest. We had multiple teams set up in our office, and we broached everything chronologically in order to teach everybody about what led up to the revolution, the activities of the revolution, particularly the regional impacts locally to us, and then the aftermath coming out of it, and some of the neat little facts and events that came out of the Revolutionary War. So it was a lot of fun. It was good camaraderie and a little bit of lesson and lots of compliments from people. And maybe we can do something similar for your audience here.
I'd love it. That's part of the goal of the Parma Hilton Historical Society.
Yes, sir.
Is to educate, as I can see on your shirt. Okay, well, I guess with that said, this is your 100th episode. I'm your guest, Mike Heise, with your host, Jerry Pickett. And Jerry, take it away.
Well, thanks, Mike. I do want to start by saying welcome to the Big P podcast. And this was not my idea. Actually, members of the Historical Society actually asked that I sit down with you and interview you. You've done a tremendous amount of good for our community by driving the podcast efforts that you've put forth. And we're really excited about the record and the legacy that you're leaving. And we thought it was more appropriate than ever to have the 100th podcast be an interview of you. Who are you? So to that end, we're going to start with, can we introduce your listeners to who you are today?
Well, my name is Mike Heise, and lifelong resident in the village of Hilton. I was educated in Hilton. I live here with my wife, Carla, and my son, Michael, and my daughter, Mallory. Growing up, I was educated at Northwood up until 4th grade, and then my family moved into the village at 4th grade and went all the way up into high school. I have 4 siblings, an older brother, Jay, you know quite well because you've lived with him, a twin brother, Pat, a younger sister, Jill, and then a younger brother, David. And my mom and dad, who have since passed on, they were also graduates of Hilton. My dad went to RIT, and my mom was a graduate of Geneseo. My mom was an educator, and my dad was a financial analyst. Presently, I'm a teacher at the Village Elementary, going into my 27th year. I'm in 3rd grade. I've done 3rd through 6th grade, and everything in between. I've also coached baseball and football and have a affinity and love for the football program. So much that when in the early 90s, we started to follow the team on cable channel 12, and we started broadcasting their football games, and we would take the VHS tapes with our play-by-play and commentary, which was quite raw, and take it over to cable channel Access 12, and they would put it on, and just had a great time with that, which I guess kind of leads into a little bit of the history now, and we're starting to get those games on my YouTube channel and history. And then, I got 2 great kids, and very proud. My son is going into his senior year at Binghamton as an industrial engineer major, and my daughter's going to be a sophomore at St. Bonaventure, where she plays basketball. So that's a little bit about me. Not more than I think your audience needs to know, but I don't know if your question's going to get into it, but a couple years back, you asked me, hey, would you like to be on the board of the Parma Hilton Historical Society? I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And I joined your board And then meetings weren't so much for me, but I thought this niche of podcasting and getting the history out in that form was much more my niche, and got involved in that. And there we are. I have
Yeah.
a great wife too. I got to say that.
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it actually worked out great. And that's the one thing that's great about the Historical Society is that wherever anybody can contribute, however they see they best fit in, is really all we look for from the participants.
Now,
And
go back to you. How can they get involved in the Historical Society? Could you plug
yeah,
that too?
yeah, no, sure. So we have monthly meetings as a board. But we actually put on presentations in the fall, basically September through May. They'll be at the fire department on Tuesday nights, the second Tuesday throughout the fall and winter, and various programs. There are other events that do occur throughout the year, but those are the primary events that occur. And then there's office hours. Dave Crum is the historian. He hosts office hours every Wednesday, 7 to 9 at his office at the community center. And then, of course, the museum is open on weekends. Sundays, 2 to 4, and there's always a couple docents there. So there's opportunities for people to go down and explore a little history themselves.
And now, before you go to your next question, I just wanted to add one more, plug in my friend RJ at Village Radio. Also, throughout my tenure at Hilton, we broadcast a lot of basketball, football, and hockey games, and I was big into the Hilton football program there for villageradio.net, being their analyst. Not as good as Jim Nance, but loved it anyway.
Well, so there's a couple different paths that I'd like to go down, but let me start. Did you go to college originally for broadcast?
I did, and I went to SUNY Geneseo with the thought of becoming a math teacher, but wasn't quite sure, so I entered the college undeclared. I took calculus my first semester, and I was overwhelmed, and I did get through with, I think, a solid B, but it was a lot of help with my friends, so I shied away from teaching math in high school. And then I said, I kind of like to talk, and I went the management and production process of broadcasting. Got involved in, the campus TV station there. Probably didn't put my foot too much forward in that. I didn't get an internship in any summertime, but it was a communication major with a minor in public relations. So a lot of the communication major is public speaking, and I like that. I think it's one of those things that I just felt natural doing. And so all of the cable channel 12 football games and the Village Radio, that just kind of came very, very simply. So I never got, we never got paid for any of that, but it was just so much fun. So yes, you're right. Did go in for broadcasting. And
so I remember you doing all the Channel 12 stuff and, obviously the game announcing and all that stuff. So that was all driven by you. You went and looked for that and opportunities to explore your passions around broadcasting post-college and during your early part of your career. So that's really cool.
Thank you.
And then going back to your family in Hilton, obviously, my family has known your family for a couple generations now, but was there any other family members beyond your parents, their ancestors, grandparents and such that were from the community? I didn't know that. Well, I did know the Welch side. So yeah, they were here.
Yeah, my grandma and grandpa, they lived, where the fire department used to be.
Yep.
And then if you're facing, if you're standing at McDonald's and you're facing in the opposite direction, they lived the second house up, really big house. And when we would visit them and that fire whistle would go, we would just cover our ears. So I had an aunt, Aunt Ann and my Uncle Joe also, and they went through Hilton as well. My mother was the oldest of three. I had a lot of English heritage in my blood and Irish through my grandfather. My grandfather was a Notre Dame graduate and went there during the Great Depression. He had a pretty wealthy aunt that was able to put him through there. So, and my dad's side, he's from Hamlin, and so we are heavily
But
in.
he went to Hilton, correct?
He went to Hilton. He went to Brockport for a little bit and then went to Hilton. That's where he met my mom. And we are also descendants of the Clefane family. And I'm sure people that are listening know that name. It was a German family that came over, I think, with eight kids and just settled this area between Hamlin and Hilton and just all around. And I think I'm a member of the John Clefane family every summer. And I think they've had it. I used to vividly remember going to the Clefane reunion, and they would have it at the North Greece Fire Department there, that thing back behind the road. And then they've had it at the fire hall, the exempt club, and that's huge. I mean, I remember it was at one point there was 2,000 members in this area, But Hilton has always been good to my family. My dad served on the village board. We were actually, when the first Apple Fest came through, we were living on Gorton Avenue. So we would, that's where we ate our dinner and lunch every day. And it was just such a great institution, really. That's how, that's the type of thing that I like about Hilton. The Hilton Carnival, the Fireman's Parade. I mean, those celebrations where when you're living in the village, I could just walk to with my family. And, it was a time when you're growing up. Streets were safe, communities were safe. You left your doors open and you played till the street lights went on. And it was just such a great community to grow up in. And so
Small time USA.
it is. And my dad passed away in 96, but he really enjoyed serving the village board. And I think Larry Gerstland was a mayor, and I think Bill Carter, who's recently passed, was on it as well. And Pat used to be the barber. I don't know, it's not Pat Marble, maybe? I think he was on it.
Larry Gosnell.
Larry Gosnell was on.
Yeah.
So I think we've always served
Ronnie
Hilton.
Gosnell.
Yes.
Ronnie Gosnell.
Yes. And being so close to the community center, that's kind of like how we kept tight.
Yeah. By the way, I grew up next door to a Clefane on Underwood Avenue. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I didn't, but it doesn't surprise me because even like one of the families, we grew up on Lighthouse Road before we moved in the village, were the Groutmans, Kurt Dusty and Corey Groutman, and they're also descendants of a Clefane sibling, and so we would always see them at the Clefane reunion and my cousins and stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that you're probably walking around a lot more Clefanes than you're even aware of.
Yep. All right, just pivoting back. So you've focused your podcasting on capturing community history. How did you discover that niche, and have you always had an interest in history?
I have had an interest in history, and, with America 250 coming up, the Revolutionary War just blew my mind in school. I just was enthralled with how could such a group of farmers take on the greatest army of them all, and in the 7 or 8 year war, take them on and defeat them, and the founding fathers. And, so when I think of national pride, those early founders and that, and the podcasting, because I talked to my mentor, Rick Pendleton of villageradio.net, and I said, what do you think? I really want to do podcasting, and I'm trying to find a niche for he goes, if you do Hilton history, you have overflowing amount of content that you can do. And so I kind of started going through him. He advises me kind of like some guests maybe that I should have. He's provided me with some, cheap equipment that he doesn't use anymore. So that I think, and I also, I want to promote Hilton too. There's a lot of good people that are still in Hilton, that have spread their wings and gone out from Hilton. I did a podcast the other day with Jeff Sorensen, who he works for Price Waterhouse as a partner, and he's been all over the world. And I find those stories fascinating. Everybody has a story, and everybody wants to tell their story, but you have to have someone to tell it to. And I think I'm a good person to tell it to. And my wife always says, "Be podcast, Mike," when we go out to a party or something. I go, "What do you mean?" And she said, "When you're podcast, Mike, you're just listening and you're not trying to
podcast, okay.
talk,
Right.
you need to listen more." And kind of like God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. So I again, tons of content. When I get done with a podcast and Carla comes down to talk to me, I end up explaining probably 3/4 of the podcast before she even listens to it, because I just get so impressed of what I hear from my guests. And I learn more about not only the history, but, how you can persevere in life. For example, I did one on Hank Ross. He's 102 years old now, and he fought in World War II. Amazing story. And that one was great because he just turned on the microphone and he took it from there. And just to hear his story. So I think with the podcasting, it's the history that I like to hear about. And I like to hear the stories of people. And I think they get a tremendous benefit out of telling their story and preserving it on a podcast for their members of their family and the ones that'll come after them.
That's awesome. And that leads to the next question. So this is your 100th podcast. And again, congratulations. It's absolutely amazing. What are some of your most memorable podcasts of this first 100?
Well, It's a great question, first of all. And I say one of those I already mentioned with Hank Ross. They call him Uncle Hank. That's his nickname. Just a fabulous guy. The history that he's evolved through, from the Great Depression and World War II and everything post. I think Dave Crumb's podcasts we've had 6 or 7 of those, and we call those Conversations with Crumb, and he's the Parma and the Village historian, and he really comes with his script, and boom, he belts it out in a half an hour. And I think one of his that he did was so cool was on Walter Vaughn, who was a slave. We had a family or descendant of his on, and just the story of how he would help slaves get to Canada, and he would have a boat in the middle of Lake Ontario, and they'd get the runaway slave there, and then they'd get him to the boat, and then they'd row him over to Canada. So that was a very memorable one. But all of Dave's are very, very memorable because he really hits the village of Hilton and the Parma Hilton history. Tom Berger, he's obviously the Tom I don't know how you say that. Mortuarian? I don't know. Mortician. And he was fabulous. I just opened up the microphone and he was able to describe people and describe the history. And it's just so meaningful because when I start listening to people, boy, the names of Burritt Road comes up, the Atkinsons and the Smiths and, Carters and Pickett. Yours was very meaningful too, because I didn't know all about your father and grandfather who were big in the fire department. Larry Gerslin was quite meaningful. Ori Me, he was big on me when I was growing up, and it was great hearing about him, paying tribute to a lot of his athletes and the guys that he coached. And also I embedded a lot of wording from other guys that have coached and knew him. And it was kind of nice to pay tribute to him. And I probably 100 of them, so many. I probably have to throw in some educational ones too. Dr. Kusorik has been on a couple, and he's very good because you get the school side of things, and he's very personable. And Kristen Polini, who's one of our superintendents of instruction, you get the educational side. Ned Dale, who's our human resource, Dave Yates, who's playing a prominent role in the village now at the school district, Mike Ellicott, big coach for the soccer team. So many to go through, and I'm really looking forward what's coming ahead with some of the old sports games and sectional finals to get those on the Big H podcast.
That's awesome. Do you happen to have an idea of how big the audience is? How many people have you reached?
Well, it's Carla always teases me. You're just going for the views and everything. So I go on platforms. I go on YouTube, and then I'll plug it into Spotify, which goes directly to Apple Podcasts, Facebook. I have a Facebook page and my wife's Facebook. So I average probably from minimal 30 views to, I think Jason Colleen was one of my I really liked his struggling with colon cancer, very, very meaningful. And his was one of the most popular, and he had like 260 views. So between like 30 and 260 views. And people, then they don't always listen to the whole thing. And, YouTube, you can kind of check the analytics to see your average amount of listening time. And what I try, and I should try to tell people is like, put in your earbuds and just walk around the house, make dinner, and listen to the whole thing, because I only got into podcasts. Well, Joe Rogan, of course, he's like the king of all podcasters. And I listened to a couple of them. They were like 3 hours long. And you really don't get to know somebody in a 3 or 4 minute soundbite on the news. So you really got to listen and listen and listen. And another guest I had was Jason Gentile, who was a captain in the Army and in Afghanistan, I believe, in Iraq. Very moving podcast, and that personally moved me, and I think it moved a lot. So your original question, anywhere from 30 to 250. But I had one of the nicest comments from a family member, and they said, we learned more about our son and your podcast than we get from him. And I was like, well, that meant a lot. So, even if you mainly get 25, 30 people, the right 25 to 30 people are listening. So.
Yeah. And more importantly, it's captured for history. So there'll be other opportunities to continue to listen.
Yep.
But it sounds like, geez, right out of the gate here, even if it's 100 episodes and, it's 5,000, 10,000 plus people that you've touched. So that's great. Did you imagine it would go on this long when it started?
I kind of did, just because my mentor, I'll go back to RJ, he just said you have so much content in the village of Hilton in the town of Parma. Carla and I, my wife, I consider her my producer, and we just wrote down a list of potential guests. And I don't even think I'm through a third of the possible ones that I want to ask. Now, some of the ones that would be just really fabulous, they're just kind of like, they're shy, and maybe they're kind of humble, and they don't want to really come on. But one person leads to another, like I would like to go to more people in your decade, and try to keep going decade by decade, and really try to, Chuck Mance, I forgot him. Rick Edelman, I think was his name. He was on. So I really would now like to be focusing more on getting that older group on.
Sure.
Because, they're fascinating too, because my generation doesn't know about the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. So in answer to your original question, I think I had an inkling I could do it. And we had an anonymous donor come through with some equipment for me, which has really aided in me able to, keep going. And
That's amazing.
It was very on the spot, and I was like shocked. And so I said, can I plug you as a sponsor? And he's like, nope, I don't want to be a sponsor, but here's something that I can do for you because I like what you're doing for the community. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome. Do you have an overall goal, or are you just going to let this continue on? And if so, do you have a succession plan?
Amanda Dudley asked me that question, and she's a great guest too. She's done a ton. Nancy Laporte. I keep naming all these people just because. And she said, "Hey, where do you want to go with this?" And I said, I just really want to keep going with promoting Hilton. Promoting that is the little town with a big heart. Is that what we say?
Sure.
In terms of a point of succession, I'd like to retire in the next few years and then put more time into the podcast, maybe even getting into the point where I could go live on Facebook or live on Rumble and things like that. I've never looked like I want to make money of it, but if you could, go on Rumble and find a couple advertisers and try that, as long as, let's put it this way, as long as we have good guests, which I do in Hilton, I'm going to keep going. So the succession plan is to keep going, and that's going to keep my mind fresh after my days of teaching are over.
Do your guests are you drawing a boundary around them that they have to have an affiliation or affinity with Parma and Hilton, or are you willing to go outside of those boundaries?
It's a great question. And when you go into YouTube or Rumble, you kind of have to put a description of what your podcast is about. And the original one that I had for YouTube, I just put the town of Parma and the village of Hilton. And then I interviewed this lady that runs a horse stable for disabled kids in Spencerport. And I put on and surrounding communities. So people are like, well, I didn't graduate from Hilton. Doesn't matter. You contribute to the village of Hilton in the town of Parma. So they just have to hit that criteria. And, it just so happens that probably 80% of my guests have gone through Hilton at some point.
Okay. How about a past historical figure? Who would you like to podcast with?
I hate to say it, but I'm going to go back to more presidents. Okay. And it's going to be...
You're after my own heart. That's where I like.
I know.
So.
And it would be George Washington, without a doubt. I've read and heard so much about him, about he really didn't want to become president after he led the troops as commander-in-chief, that he made some mistakes in battle, but they ended up helping us in the end. Did he really chop down a cherry tree, and did he wear false teeth? To pick his brain, and I'm inspired by him 250 years later, and to sit there and to listen to him on what it was like back then and what he must have had to endure. And just, between him and Lincoln, it's a close one, but I would say George Washington.
Well, it would be an amazing discussion for sure. And he's a lot of the attitude I have about that whole AGE acronym, about appreciation and gratitude and endurance. I've been, as part of the Historical Society, we are doing the book club right now, and we're reading The Glorious Cause. Prior to that, we read 1776, and you get to see it was just a different breed of person back then, and what they had to go through to not only survive, but to actually win the war and give us our country is just an absolute amazing story. And the sacrifice is just, I don't know if there's an equal sacrifice in history.
And I have to say it, I don't know if it's cliche or whatever. We always have to say our history wasn't perfect, and I'll say that. But you know what? Watching this World Cup and watching Europeans come over and just what they think of the United States, and I'm sure there's some naysayers out there, but just I went on a TikTok for like 5 minutes yesterday, and they just said, we owe the United States an apology. You are the greatest country on the world. Some of them was maybe just from air conditioning, the freedom, the hospitality, and it didn't just happen in 2026. That's been, ebbing and flowing the entire year with some major hiccups too. But we're still standing, and we still are the best country in the world.
Sometimes you need people from outside to remind you how good you have it. It's too easy to get lost inside your own.
Perfectly said.
So, Mike, to that end, we are celebrating America 250 this year. When our descendants look back on this era in your podcasts, because those will be historical documents, and they look back at this during our tricentennial, because we are doing a time capsule, and I would like to somehow capture what you've created thus far.
Be honored.
What do you want them, our descendants, to know about this time, our time, in the country and in the world?
I think what I want them to know about our country is, again, not being perfect, striving to get better every day. The world can be a very evil place, but there are more quality, good people out there than there are bad people, than what the media likes to tell us. And I think my podcast it's basically people's stories, and people's stories are inspirational. And when you get to hear them, and you get to hear these people, most of them come from the village of Hilton, town of Parma. Like, that has enriched our area and our people, the state, and it just spreads out with the country and then the world. And I mean, you're talking to a guy that I haven't crossed Ridge Road more than a handful of times in my 50s, but I'm 57 now. And, basically you get the point. I don't travel. I'm a homebody, and I like being a homebody. And Hilton being my hometown, I love it, and I don't think I'd like to be anywhere else.
That's awesome. I'm going to do a quick impromptu rapid fire.
Sure.
Vanilla or chocolate?
Vanilla.
Okay. Bill's record.
They hadn't won the big one.
What do you see for this year?
Oh, for this year?
Yeah,
I thought you meant
up.
overall.
No.
I was talking to a friend the other day. He was actually in Berkeley, one of the old season tickets. What's the regular season of 17 games?
17 games.
12-5.
Yeah. Okay, I like it.
12-5.
So
what do you think?
I had him at 10-7, 11-6, somewhere in that area. Very tough schedule. Just got to win the AFC East, and then it's game on. So I feel good about it.
And I think they are predicted to win the AFC East too.
Yes. A good way to start closing this up, because you're going to be starting the next 100 of your podcast. So, Mike, I wanted to thank you. Again, congratulations on this. It's an amazing accomplishment. Really, I had no idea where this was going to go, but I'm so glad that you did it. On behalf of the Parma Hilton Historical Society, we appreciate what you do and look forward to celebrating your 200th. And I promise I will sit here and do this again with you at 200. So thank you, sir.
You're welcome, and we're going to be around.
All right.
Thank you, Historical Society.
The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find